Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, we would like to invite you to join us in the tent for the memorial service. The program will start in just a few minutes.
Make sure I have this right. I have the first video.
At 1:30 we were going to start with this.
Right.
And then right after this video, then we were coming to you.
Wait, okay, is this a video?
Yes.
Oh yeah, right after that video. Yeah.
So you're not going to speak until after the video. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, yeah. If everybody could turn off their cell phones and could all the speakers, for those of us in the room who don't hear so well like myself, could speak very loudly, it would be appreciated. On behalf of Marilyn and the Dorr family and Jerry Ward, many of us know Marilyn was the quarterback at home and in life, and Jerry Ward and Mary Ellen Sieben were the dual-threat quarterbacks at work and in the field. We welcome you to the celebration of the remarkable life of Lawrence Douglas Dorr, a.k.a. Larry Dorr, a very special man, a friend, a surgeon, a husband, and a father. My name is John Callahan, and I'm one of many mentees, colleagues, and friends of Larry Dorr that are gathered here at Annandale and via live stream for the celebration of Larry's life. The structure and forum of this program that Marilyn has chosen will allow many to explore their feelings of impactful ways Larry touched their lives and the lives of others. I am sure I speak for many in the room that not too many days have gone by since last December 28th, when Larry passed away, that I don't think about some moment I experienced with Larry and either shed a tear or have a good chuckle. He truly inspired all of us to reflect on our own lives. And with that introduction, we will start the program with two spiritual reflections from Rabbi Uri Hersher and Dr. Dickie Jones. First, I give you Rabbi Uni Hersher, who will lead us in a spiritual reflection of Larry Dorr. Rabbi Hersher, who met Larry through the Skirball Foundation, and this was the first foundation to give Operation a grant. They remain lifelong friends. Rabbi.
Good afternoon. I went to seminary for many, many years. My parents actually thought that I'd never get a job. They were almost right. And during those seminary years, we learned all about blessings, but we never learned how to bless a blessing. And that's what we're doing today. We are blessing a blessing in our lives. John and Jerry Ward and I were standing just in back of the tent, and Jerry said, "You have no idea what we just found very close to the podium." And so what's that? A half-smoked cigar. You thought he wasn't here? You know he's here. "80 years ago, we on this earth were blessed with the birth of Larry Dorr. Since the beginning of time, parents have given their newborns a name and have expressed their hopes for the child in their hearts. They have prayed that the infant may grow with love, with caring, with friendship, with family, with character, with spirit, with honor, with wisdom, with humor, with dreams, with joy, with awareness, with loyalty, with fulfillment, with faith, with culture, with meaning, with trust, with a remarkable marriage, and with the devotion for the healing of humankind. All of us gathered here this afternoon to celebrate Dr. Larry Dorr's life, have experienced these qualities during our journey with him. Hopes and wishes at his birth 80 years ago have been fulfilled with dignity, enlightened purpose, and a work ethic beyond measure. We continued this day to be elevated by Dr. Dorr's life, which we celebrate together on this beautiful afternoon. May his memory remain that blessing for the generations yet to be born.
Next, we will hear from Dr. Dickie Jones. Dickie is a prominent orthopedic surgeon and joint replacement surgeon in Dallas, but more importantly, has been one of the spirits of Operation Walk since its beginning, probably taking more trips than anybody that I know anyway. And during that time, Dickie became our spiritual leader of Operation Walk. So I'm really introducing him today as our spiritual leader of Operation Walk. Dickie?
Thank you, John. His eye is on the sparrow. I know he watches me. It's an honor, Marilyn, friends, colleagues, family, for me to be up here and for me to celebrate Larry's life. And today I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about angels. I'm going to talk about blessings. And I'm going to talk about death. I first learned of angels on my grandmother, that was Big Mama, front porch swing. She was shelling peas. She taught me the guardian angel prayer, and I close each day with this prayer. I offer it to you. Angels of God, our guardians dear, to whom God's love commits us here, ever this day and night be at our side, to light, to love, to protect, and to guide. And you know, angels, they do carry a message to us about God's loving care and how we can respond to that care. I know that Larry knew about angels in his life and in his mission. This is the cover of one of his books, illustrated by Gail Garner Roski. She was one of our Operation Walk Angels, a philanthropist and a volunteer. Now, Larry Dorr realized his dream. He wrote, "The wonderful opportunity to give back to medicine, to express gratitude for my parents' lessons, for my wife's belief in me, and to my God was Operation Walk." He is an iconic role model. He understood that his goal was teaching those around you to give back and live by the golden rule. Larry finished this essay with these words: I hope that all my colleagues will reach the stage of their career to realize that to give back is to perpetually reignite the love of medicine and indeed the love of life. And boy, can we ever see the results of that belief in the manifestation of Operation Walk. This poem is about healing power. In a way, this poem is about the life of Larry Dorr. There is a healing power within your mind and hands to mend the body's broken and misshapen bones. There is a healing power within your heart and soul to reach the spirit's sorrow and despair. There is a healing power within your love and mine to understand life's harmony and joy. There is a healing power within each hour and day to experience God's light and God's love. The nuns at our St. Paul University Hospital would always ask me to read this statement of death at our semi-annual memorial services, and I was always honored to do it. I share it now with you. I believe in death. I believe that death is a part of life, a part of every life. I believe that we are born to die so that we may live more fully, born to die a little each day in selfishness, to pretense, and to sin. I believe that every time we pass from one stage of life to another, that something in us dies. The innocence of youth, the spontaneity of childhood, and the daring moving on to reasoning and maturity. I believe that death is a way of nature, and a flower that fades, a leaf that falls, a raindrop that evaporates, and a breeze that just passes by. I believe that I taste death in moments of loneliness, of unlove, of sorrow, of disappointment. When I'm afraid and I lose courage and give up, then I see my broken dreams, and every time I say goodbye. Indeed, I believe that I am dying before my time. When I live in bitterness, hatred, or isolation. I believe that I create my own death by the way that I live. I believe that life and death are one, that in the same moment I can say that I'm living and I am dying. I believe that Jesus walked towards his own death out of love, and he invites us all to do the same. I want to express my thanks to my friend, my hip surgeon, Larry Dorr, and to all of those who contribute to our mission of love with Operation Walk. And blessings to us all. Thank you.
Well, I heard him before I ever saw him. He came to Centinela Hospital in 1983, and Dr. Clarence Shields brought him up to the ward. We were on 6 East End, and I heard his booming laugh coming off the elevator. First of all, I'm thinking, who laughs in a hospital? And around the corner he came with a big smile and just that robust walk. and I never really realized how much he changed my life and the life of many other people, not patients, but his staff and his colleagues, with the presence of a man that he was. Anyway, we said, hang on, we're going for a ride, and there was Dr. Dorr. When Dr. Dorr came to the ward to check on his patients, he always wanted a nurse to make rounds with him. And he was a taskmaster. You had to know everything about the patient, the hemoglobin, hematocrit, how far they walked, what the drain put out, and he was very intimidating. And most of the nurses, when they saw him come to the ward, they skedaddled. They didn't want to be the ones to make the rounds and have to answer all the questions. But I caught on to that fast. And so in the morning when I came to work and I made rounds, I would listen to the report on all of his patients. So I had all these little scratchy notes about what every patient did. And then when he made rounds, if I went with him, which I usually did, I was the youngest nurse and like they were throwing me to the wolves, I knew all the answers. And I think after a little while he thought, man, she's really smart, and he'd come looking for me to make rounds with him even on the days that I wasn't at the hospital. One funny story I remember about Dr. Dorr is he always had this thing, for women he called it the lipstick sign, and for a man he had to be shaved because that showed Dr. Dorr that the patient was feeling better. Those are things that people do when they start to feel good again. And I remember this was back in the days when people were in the hospital for a week or 10 days in the very beginning. So I was in a room with another nurse whose Dr. Dorr's patient, who practically coded. The patient just had this episode, and so everybody was in there, and the code team had just left because the patient got stabilized. I was next to the patient adjusting his oxygen cannula. The room was in utter disarray. There were IVs, papers, tubes, everything all over the room. I had one nurse in there cleaning up, and the nurse that was assigned to the patient, she was doing some charting. And all of a sudden I look up and Dr. Dorr's in the doorway, and he looks at me and he says, Jerry, why is this man not shaved? And we just cracked up. Even the patient started laughing. It was just so ludicrous and funny. He was looking for that shave sign. Dr. Dorr really did love his patients. It was evident in the way he took care of them and how he stood by them. Once he operated on you, you were a part of his family. And if he was busy, he always made sure that someone on the team would see to whatever you needed. I could always count on getting a message from him that was challenging. Find me a doctor in Egypt that can transplant a toe onto a gallbladder and make sure he won't charge the patient. Or get me a helicopter to fly me to some remote village in Guatemala in an hour. I didn't even know if they had helicopters in Guatemala, but he could always rely on me to figure it out. Over the years, the challenges got harder. I remember getting a patient off a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean after she fractured her hip, and getting skiers off mountains and back to Los Angeles after taking spills that wrecked their hip. He could always fix them up again. I think he was just trying to test me to see if he could find something I couldn't do. And man, could that guy laugh. He was extra funny when he told jokes. He really got into it. I think he told the Giuseppe and Maria joke at the Christmas party for about 8 years in a row. Who can forget him saying, after he told us that Maria, on their wedding night, discovered that Giuseppe had half of one foot amputated. Mama, he's only got a foot and a half. And Mama saying, look out, Maria, this is a job for Mama. What made me laugh the hardest was his accent. Did you know he was fluent in Italian and Spanish? Yep, he just added an O or an A to the end of every word, and there you go. He could also laugh at himself. We made videos every year for him that poked good-natured fun at him. Who can forget the yellow towel, the result of his post-daily exercise routine from the workout room to his office? Or the big SUV we had where the whole staff got out of the back seat like clowns out of a VW. We loved it that he had that car. He was such a rock star in it. We made up some rap songs for him, wore bling in his honor, and Kyle and Sam even anointed him Heavy D. and how endearing it was that he'd walk across the parking lot to the hospital and hitch his pants up, way up. All of these funny moments were immortalized in the annual Christmas video and poem I wrote for him. It was something he always looked forward to. He loved his family. I remember the first time I met Marilyn. She was such a gracious lady, beautiful, kind, and thoughtful. In fact, the few times Dr. Dorr made me mad enough to quit, I couldn't do it because I didn't want to make more work for Marilyn or hurt her feelings. I was always jealous when his son Mike told me that they would go out Christmas shopping on Christmas Eve. What a dad! Who does that? It either showed his spontaneity or that he was a little bit crazy. He'd be the guy that would throw himself in the mosh pit. He loved his friends and would do anything for them, and they showed love for him by being the foundation of supporters for his research and Operation Walk. As busy as he was, he always carved out time to have fun with them. Vacations on the lake, golf, and dinners. He was a loyal friend to many. He introduced me to some of the best people in my life. The Dimensions program at Cornell sent 2 students on Operation Walk missions every year. Now they are doctors, PAs, nurses, veterinarians, and anesthesiologists. We felt like a proud parent as each student kept in touch with us, letting us know we inspired them to become medical professionals. He built a team at work, connecting me to Mary Ellen, Rudy, Jim, Mike, PJ, Nancy, Corinne, Felicia, Jennifer, Jen, and Dawn. His colleagues and partners, Dr. Long, Dr. Kumar, and Dr. Gilbert. His fellows, Dr. Bindleglass, Dr. Cohen, Karn, Mackel, Inaba, Ike, Prashant, Addie, and Jinjun. His loyal research partner, Dr. Zinian Wan. We are all family, joined by our love and service to Dr. Dorr. He also introduced me to thousands of patients, locally and internationally. He developed a strong work ethic in our team that we taught to others in the USA and internationally. When I retired last year, I looked through hundreds of cards and letters we received over the years. Yes, I save everything. And the common thread was how well people were taken care of. Many people that started out as patients became dear friends. That is a gift he has given me that sustains me through his loss. The comfort and kind words coming from those who hurt as much as I do have gotten me through this past year. Dr. Dorr was a pioneer in so many things. He started home visits before home health did. He put on community talks about arthritis and joint replacement before it came popular. He fought for outstanding patient care and the team concept. He knew what made sense, and he was a bulldog in getting things done and maintaining them. He was a rock star all over the world. He had some crazy ideas, but I learned you just had to go with it, as the ideas always worked out for the better. He had good gut instinct. He was a great teacher and mentor, a snappy dresser, and often in need of a haircut. He was his own man. Lastly, what breaks my heart the most is that when one of us was sick or had surgery, the other was a faithful supporter. We were both strong and nothing could keep us away from work for long. It almost got to the point where we silently dared one another on how fast we could get back to work. He'd come limping in a week after hip surgery, and I'd be sitting at my desk 6 days after the removal of a lung tumor. We'd look at each other as if we were crazy and then give a little thumbs up and a wink. Nothing could keep us down. When he became ill in November of 2020, I could not visit him in the hospital due to the pandemic. All I could think of is that he was wondering where I was. We emailed a bit, but like both of us, it was work-related. There was still so much to do. He was working on his book and getting Walk to help Native Americans. I am forever grateful to Yoli for getting a cell phone to his ear on one of his last days so I could tell him how many people were praying for him and that I loved him and was grateful for all the opportunities he gave me. When I was a little girl and upset, my mom used to tell me, things will always look better in the morning. How many days over these dark months has she been proven wrong? I dream about him and awaken only to realize he isn't coming back, and I feel like we have lost him all over again. He's probably mad about that. Now we can celebrate his life. He touched so many people. He carved a broad path in life. How lucky we all are to have been in his orbit.
Next, at Marilyn's request, we're having some remembrances of Larry from many of his friends, from many parts of his life. Each will come up, tell their name, and give their story. We're going to start with his two sons, Mike and Randy.
Thank you. Mike Dorr. I just want to say thank you all for coming out today as we celebrate the life of Larry Dorr. Hopefully it's not too solemn of a day. He'd want us to celebrate his life, although a little bit of sadness. We want to remember the good times, achievements, accomplishments, father, husband, friend, physician, teacher, and tell a few fun stories. I'd like to tell a few stories about his automotive acumen, but we'll wait for those for later. We've only have a few short minutes. Game time starts at 4, so I'll be short. But I'll ad-lib a little bit here. As Uri said, we do want to bless the blessings, and over the last years, we've had a few. And I want to thank people for the well-placed birthday songs, the maple donuts, the other miracle workers. You know who you are. And as Dad would say, if I was you, this is what I would do. And we all know what that meant. This is what you should do. So today, laugh, eat, drink, tell fun stories. We'll miss you, Dad. We love you.
Go Hawks. My friends, that's not the only thing I remember about my dad, but he was regarded as a great surgeon and a great father. In many ways, he was a great father. He tried to lead me down the right path, and I remember he gave me the three funny epic talks, I call them. The Iowa farm job in the summer, military and medicine. So my German ancestors came from Germany. They settled in the United States around 1900 in Iowa. The Dorr family has had a family farm there ever since. And living here with my mom and dad by the golf courses and the beach, it didn't make sense to go work on the family farm, so I gave him a no on that one. I wish I would have done that looking back. The military, my dad was a decorated lieutenant in the United States Navy as a medical doctor, and I was actually born in Jacksonville, Florida on the Navy base in the Navy hospital. And I don't regret that one. Looking back, I couldn't fathom living in barracks. But he talked to me about medicine as well. And with his reputation, I could have gotten into any medical school I wanted to, but I told him I didn't like math and physical sciences. So I went to law school instead. And to this day, I couldn't fathom studying molecular biology in medical school. But with his reputation, yeah, I could have gone anywhere. He was regarded as a great surgeon, and he was also a great father, and he was very generous. Due to his generosity, I was able to get a business degree from USC and a law degree in Orange County, California, and as a result, this February, planning to take the Utah State Bar, possibly to be corporate counsel for a healthcare corporation. And the Dorr family legacy can continue on in the healthcare industry. I think Dr. Dorr still lives. Thank you.
I'm Bob Porter. My first memory of Larry was 65 years ago in a geometry class taught by Mrs. Rendelman in Roosevelt High School in Des Moines, Iowa. We were competing in geometry as well as all the other physical sciences throughout high school. We played football together, but neither one of us could make the basketball team in 11th grade. And in typical Larry Dorr fashion, he made his own team and got us into the City League. And he had one overwhelming rule, and that was to pass him the ball. Larry averaged 33 points a game. We won the City League twice, and he was a happy man. During that time, he also boxed Golden Gloves, which scared the hell out of me. Larry was my roommate at Cornell College, and I discovered then his tireless energy. He was flat broke all the time, but could always come up with some way to make money. He started with poker, but that worked sometimes, but not always. He got a job washing dishes in the cafeteria, which he did every evening, and he owned about 8 or 10 candy machines on the campus, and he reload those every few days. He gave up poker when one of our classmates needed a term paper to do. And I can remember Larry reading 3 different novels one night. He stayed up all night. He had me go to class the next day and take notes. The second night, he wrote a 6 or 7 page term paper and rough typed it. He gave it to me in the morning. I gave it to his girlfriend at the time. She finished typed it, took it to the guy that wanted it, and got paid $200. So he found another way of making money. The interesting thing that bothered me was he'd take my notes that I'd take during the day, didn't matter if it was physics or whatever it was, he'd tape them up on the dishwashing machine. He'd memorize those notes in the hour that he's there. He'd give them back to me, and he'd never look at them again. 3 weeks later, he'd beat me on my notes on the tests. He had incredible memory. He also had a drive that was hard to beat, and some of our fraternity brothers were talking about the Indianapolis 500. And Larry thought, well, I've got to do that. And then he found out it was during finals week, and he couldn't figure out what to do until he came up with a great idea. He went to the Dean of Men and explained that one of the Dorr family up there in northwest Iowa had died, his uncle. The dean felt real bad for him. He said, you know, take the week off, you can do your finals when you get back. Larry jumped in the car and went to the Indy 500 and had a great time. And surprisingly, the next 2 years, he had 2 more uncles that died. So he never missed the Indy 500. After Cornell, we moved on to Iowa City. He was my roommate again. And after a year and a half of that, I found another roommate sitting right there. And he found Marilyn. And he was my best man in my wedding, and I was his. Larry, as a lot of you know, loved New York City, and he introduced me to the Oak Room Bar at the Plaza Hotel. And a far cry from what I introduced him to was a 2-man tent on the Salmon River. 2 great friends with parallel lives. He was a city doc, and I was a country doc. We traveled the world together: Nepal, China, Hong Kong, Philippines, Nicaragua, Peru, Baja, Mexico, Cuba, Caribbean, France, and India. Dr. Ranawat and Larry and I went to India for 2 weeks and lectured. That was a highlight of my orthopedic life. He found time as well to do some whitewater rafting with me in Alaska, Oregon, and Idaho. As I mentioned earlier, Larry had a photographic memory that blessed him his entire life. He had a fierce desire to maximize his God-given talents, intellect, and that extraordinary memory. He acquired knowledge effortlessly and applied it with fearless courage, compassion, and charity. We will miss his love, 3-piece suits, cigars, Panama hats, chauffeurs, and that great credit card. Little did I know what brilliance, ambition, willpower, and work ethic lay within the heart and soul of my best man. I'm grateful to be here to celebrate his presence in my life.
I'm Gene Briette. As a young lad from Sheffield, Iowa, town of 800 people, I was introduced to big time Larry Dorr from Roosevelt High. Little did he know I graduated number 2 in my class. I wasn't in the upper 10%. Larry paid, I'll let some of you figure that out on your own. Larry paid for his education at Cornell by working board jobs and obtaining scholarships. My roommate got Larry a summer job in Minnesota. The first day on the job, Larry misinterpreted the instructions and demolished a wall that had been built the previous day. He was immediately fired, spent the rest of the summer collecting unemployment checks. I think he knew what he was doing. While Larry was attending the Iowa Med School, I returned from the Army and spent the summer rooming with him in Iowa City. We spent a lot of time playing basketball in the women's gym. He knocked me on my ass one day, and I said, "Larry, that's a foul." He looked me in the eye and he said, "No blood, no foul." He was competitive in all of his areas. The Porters, Dorrs, Linda and I all got married in the same year. That friendship has continued throughout all the years. We've enjoyed skiing, sailing, the Caribbean, and just enjoying one another's company. On one of our ski trips, Linda injured her knee, and Porter and Dorr both decided that she needed to be casted. So Bob's practice was in Twin Falls, and they decided Fred Zerbo would bring up some casting material. They casted Linda's leg, and after they finished, Larry pulled me off to the side and said, "Bruley, when we get back to LA, I'm going to improve on that cast." On a sailing trip, the Caribbean, the rum was flowing pretty good, and Larry and Bob got involved in a discussion on whether cement or cementless was the best. They never quit until the rum ran out. Neither was happy with the solution, but Larry was sure he won. You all know Larry is a fierce competitor. Larry and I played in a 2-day Dieter golf tournament years ago in Palm Springs. At the end of the first day, Larry looked at me and he said, "Bruley, you're going to give me a heart attack." And then he hesitated and he said, "That wouldn't be fair at all. You should have the heart attack." On another visit to LA, Larry said, "Let's go sailing." So I agreed. He'd bought a third interest in a Cal 20 sailboat. So we drove over to Marina del Rey. We got on the sailboat, pushed off from the dock, and Larry looked at me and he said, "Well?" I said, "Well, what?" He said, "Bruley, you know how to sail, don't you?" I said, "No, I don't." We had our sons there, Randy and Josh and Matt, and I think they were like 8 or 10 years old. So we're out in the middle of the channel, and we got right in the middle of a Sabbath race with a bunch of 10-year-olds. They blew the whistle. We stopped the race. A couple of drunks on a dock across the way said, "For $1.95, you can get a book on basic sailing." Larry sold the interest in the boat. Some saw Larry as arrogant. They missed the point. Larry was confident. He always knew from the beginning he could and would make a difference. And indeed he did. Not only in medicine, but all of the people who knew Larry. Some saw Larry as a bully. He wasn't a bully. He just expected those around him to be the best they could be. He encouraged and demanded that you be a more productive person, but he never asked anyone to be more than what he was willing to do. Larry was loyal and generous, the best friend anyone could ever ask for. I will personally miss him. Our personal loss is heaven's gain. God wanted a good surgeon, and he's got one. Go Hawks!
I'm Ron Sandler. I'm from Mesa, Arizona. Franklin Junior High was a school in Des Moines that used to open their gym on Saturday mornings for open play, And this was the first time that I met Larry and Bob playing basketball in 7th and 8th grade. In high school, we went to different schools and we were in different conferences, so we really didn't interconnect at that time. But we then all went to small liberal arts colleges in Iowa. Larry and Bob went to Cornell, as you've heard, and Larry played middle guard on the football team. I went to Grinnell College and was a running back. The final game of our playing days was pitted against each other. Cornell was leading the conference with 1 loss, and we were 1 game behind. I don't know how many of you ever witnessed a Division III football game, but getting more than 200 or 300 fans in the stadium is a win. Well, this was a big deal for us. Grinnell had not competed for a conference championship in 30 years. So the college chartered several Greyhound buses to bring students to the game. Cornell had installed wooden bleachers on the visitor side. We had so many fans and parents that a portion of the bleachers collapsed during the game. Well, Larry and I acknowledged each other during the game, but we came out victorious, and that was something that I reminded Larry repeatedly over the years. We then went on to medical school together, and after the second year, Larry dropped back to get a master's in pharmacology while Bob and I continued our studies. Our last 6 weeks in medical school, Larry and I were on the internal medicine service. We would go in and make rounds, then head to the golf course, play 18 holes, and then go back for afternoon rounds. I don't recall the rotation that Larry was on, but he usually found a way to join us. After medical school, Bob and I interned together, and then after service commitments, we entered orthopedic residencies. But Larry's was a little bit more circuitous. When he finished his tour with the Navy, he came back to LA, but had a 6-month hiatus before his residency began. So he started working with a local insurance rep, and his sole responsibility was to play golf every day with potential clients, and he could drive any car he wished, and he wished for a Cadillac Eldorado. He did this, he said, until he could no longer look himself in the mirror. So he quit that and then did ER work until his residency began. Well, Larry's entrance into orthopedics was a boon for Larry as well as for orthopedics. While he has many accomplishments to claim as an orthopedic surgeon, the founding of OpWalk may be his most lasting legacy, providing pain-free and increased mobility to patients all over the world, as well as here in the United States. It's what a tribute it is to his goal of giving back. And I hope we all continue to support that endeavor going forward. I tried to come up with words that would capture Larry's essence. Words like shy, retiring, quiet, humble. It didn't seem to work. But then others came to mind. Words like brilliant, innovative, driven, generous, fun-loving, philanthropic, mentor and friend, and avid Iowa Hawkeye fan. In fact, I'm sure he's saying, "Shut up, Sandler, the game starts in less than 2 hours." The world and the field of orthopedics, and we here who knew and loved him, are in a better place because of Larry Dorr.
Good afternoon. I'm Bob Watkins, and my association with Larry starts just a little bit later than these last guys. I arrived in the LA County Hospital trauma ward, and that's where Larry and I became friends. If anybody that's gone through that experience realizes it's a bit of mayhem and chaos and 40 patients and suddenly the people that really enjoy that environment end up being together late at night and early in the morning. Who's this guy doing hematocrits on all the patients at 4 in the morning? Things like that. So Larry and I became, who are you, that. And then pretty soon we became friends in dealing with these very difficult patients. We had Dr. Harvey to contend with, and we both took the challenge. And for some reason, Larry took a liking to a guy from Memphis, Tennessee, as me, much more competitive than smart. And he comes up to me after the thing is somewhat over and says, "Watkins, I like the way you work. We'll be partners forever. If you need any money, call me." So me with my wife and kids up on the Welsh border in England for a year, at $500 a month, I gave him a couple of calls. The trip to Switzerland, I'm living in a boarding house, I gave him a couple of calls. I think my relationship with Larry was, and I'm more of a play-by-play guy than a color guy. I mean, it was a personal, man-to-man friendship. That offer of a job, Larry never varied over 40 years, rock solid. Whatever I was doing, I took a different subspecialty spine than he did, and we were complementary. He would have taken me in at any time through that and found a way to make it work. He was solid as a rock, never varied once. And as our families got close, Marilyn, the kids, and it became much warmer over a period of time, but our relationship centered around our jobs and medicine. In the world of surgeons, I always thought Larry, there are two things that he demanded. Number one, you need to know how to operate. It was hard for him to talk to somebody he didn't feel was up to the challenge. But the second thing with Larry is you had to care. You had to care about your patients. All of us who've trained young surgeons and have been associated with surgeons for 50 years, you pretty realize some people are excellent surgeons, they don't really care that much. It's a sad commentary. Larry would not abide that. He just wouldn't stand for that. So it was, and he was very demanding, as you know. When we were on the faculty together at USC with Sarmiento and starting things, I mean, Larry could make things uncomfortable when he would get up at a conference with a visiting professor and say, "The only reason you're here in town is to find out how a real department works." And don't give him any of our secrets. So he had some great experience. I didn't know what a Montrachet was. I thought it was an automobile till, Larry helped clue me in. And playing sports with him has been mentioned. In basketball, Larry was not Mr. Feathertouch. He was the White Rhino, and it was a great time. It was a great experience being with him, and the families became close over time. But for Larry and me, it was personal friendship. Never varied, never changed, and it was one of the great experiences of my life. Thank you very much.
My name is Dave Bindleglass. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and I'm one of a group of people that were Larry's fellows. To the non-medical, you go to college, you go to medical school, you do your training as an intern and a resident, and if you're lucky enough, then you go on to do another year specializing in a particular part of what you're interested in. And that meant that you had Larry's undivided attention for 12 months. And that was a wonderful experience. It was a great learning experience, and it was terrifying. Marilyn and Larry were gracious enough to come to my wedding. And the night before my wedding, my friends were kind of roasting me a little bit, and they were talking about nicknames that I had had over the years. And of course, Larry, not to be outdone, stands up and says, well, I had a nickname for Dave. It was Bonehead. And I looked at him and I said, but you remember, right, Larry, that was the best day that I performed as a fellow for you. And of course, that got one of Larry's typical laughs. I met Larry for the first time when I interviewed for the fellowship, and he was speaking at a course in New York, and we agreed to meet at the hotel. And we talked for about 30 seconds about orthopedics, and then we talked for about a half hour about football. And that shouldn't surprise anybody. And about 20 years later, he told me that, you know, it was a conversation about football that made him decide that he was going to hire me as a fellow. It was interesting because we talked about sports and surgery a lot because there's a lot of crossover. There's the preparation, there's the dedication, there's the focus, and there's the need to, you know, bring your full attention and your full energy every single day. And just like, as you all know, Larry is competitive in his focus on winning, but in the case of surgery, it was the same focus on having a good result for every single patient. And he told us to care about people. You know, he beat the heck out of us as fellows, but it was always for one reason, and that was to make us better, because he wanted us to be able to help people even a fraction of the way that he was able to help people. And believe it or not, he also taught us humility. And I think that was one of the greatest lessons, not just because he actually taught us, but if you stand next to Larry, you really can't help but be humble. You know, people, we're all people who achieved a lot. You know, the group of fellows have all had nice careers. They're good surgeons. But to stand next to Larry, you would know that you could achieve, you could overachieve, you could overachieve, but there were still 3 or 4 more gears that Larry had that the rest of us just couldn't even think about. And you know, you've heard about the things that he's done. I won't go through the list. You know, a bunch of us have had the opportunity to go on Operation Walk missions, which is just an incredible thing. And, you know, I always tell people that, yeah, we do great stuff for the patients, but when you come home from one of those missions, you realize that it's as much what you gained as what the patients gained. It's just an incredible thing. So we, as fellows, to Marilyn, to Chit, who I don't know if you call an uncle or a grandpa in this chain of events, but you know, who very much contributed to this whole thing, taught Larry in the way he taught us. We are incredibly fortunate as a group of people, as is the case for everybody in this room. Larry's touched us in a way that it's hard to imagine that any human being could touch another human being, or that anybody could do as much for the people of this entire world as Larry Dorr did. And we're just, as fellows, incredibly lucky to have had the experience and just the time with Larry that we did. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dave Dorr, Larry's older brother. Larry was not born into wealth or privilege. He was an Iowa boy who rose from ordinary Midwest beginnings to international renown and never forgot where he came from. His life was extraordinary. His father was a Methodist minister, The three boys in our family, Larry, Jim, and me, were PKs, preacher's kids. Larry's mother was loving and sweet. She saw good in everybody and everything, and she had patience, an asset because young Larry, already super competitive, could be a handful. When she'd ask him to do something and he'd stubbornly resist, she'd say, "Lawrence, go outside, walk around the house, and think about what I just said." Over time, he wore a long, deep path in the lawn, all the way down to the dirt. Not a single blade of grass survived. Sports were his lifelong passion. He played on a baseball team that won the Des Moines City Championship in the Babe Ruth League, an organization for young kids. In junior high school, he was playing on 3 different basketball teams, and he was president of his homeroom. He played football on championship teams in high school and in college at Cornell. He was the 3rd chair trombone in his high school band, and as Bob Porter mentioned, he fought in the Des Moines Golden Gloves tournament. He fashioned a small cage for a white rat he was given in his high school biology class for experiments, and chauffeured the rat to home and to school every day on his bicycle. That rat was living the life of Riley, unaware of its impending doom because the class day of dissections was coming. Larry's summers growing up were spent on farms in Iowa owned by 4 of his Dorr uncles, who were Dad's brothers. Those summer days were breakfasts of steak and Iowa sweet corn, hours and hours of hard work, no free passes because he was a nephew, driving tractors, baling hay, raising hundreds of turkeys, rides on a rotund Shetland pony named Potsy, baseball games with Dorr cousins, and swimming and fishing at 2 of Iowa's largest lakes. A financial assist from his 4 uncles, Harold, Wesley, Cecil, and Melvin, enabled him to attend medical school at the University of Iowa. Their faith in him changed his life. The foundation for what became Larry's purpose in life was in a home of compassion and stewardship. He learned that those who drew the short straw in life through no fault of their own, who were crippled or disabled, poor or needy, and who had given up hope, deserved a helping hand. Both of his parents struggled with a cruel disease, tuberculosis of the bone. His mom at age 11, his dad at age 13. It was what he learned in medical school that shaped his future and his humanity in profound ways. But he always knew that who he was is what his parents taught him to be. His vision, which came from his heart, was a better world through medicine. He breathed life into Operation Walk and was its conscience and its very soul. How magnificent it is that a surgeon's gifted hands can give life to feet. Changing thousands of lives for the better defined him, as did his bold creativity in surgery, his teaching, his philanthropy, his nonstop energy, his relentless ambition, and his German work ethic, a Dorr family trait. He raised the bar on everything he did, in the operating room and even on the golf course. He loved a challenge, and he lived to be in those moments, to test himself, to prove himself to himself day after day after day. I'd bet when he reached the pearly gates, St. Peter asked his name, looked in his giant book, and said, "Oh, yes, I see you were a physician on earth. And what did you do on earth that you think qualifies you to enter the kingdom of heaven?" I'd bet that Larry rolled his eyes and exclaimed, "What? You never saw me do hip replacement?" He dreamed impossible dreams of dramatic advances in orthopedics and then made them possible, giving the world a special gift. He left us reluctantly, but his spirit will always live on. He's with us here today. He'll be with us forever. He inspired us all. Amen.
This is an intimidating group. I'm used to talking to 12 people at a time as opposed to all these people. I've learned a lot about Larry today that I didn't know before. Speakers were great. I didn't meet Larry until about 30 years ago. By then, he was already accomplished. I didn't know what it was that caused him to be so accomplished, but I found out over a period of time. Larry actually is the best friend I've ever had. But I can see that there's about 20 other people in this room that can say that also. He's a great guy. I liked him because I considered him to be, well, he was definitely an optimist. He had empathy, charity, and generosity. I got to know him well. I've traveled with him maybe 20 or 30 times. We've been to all these golf courses like Kohler, Baltusrol. We've had Bloody Marys at the top of the World Trade Center months before it came down. Larry has been a great friend now for 30 years, but it's basically been through the activity of golf or dining. He's a pretty good diner too, but, well, a lot better than he is a golfer. First tournament I ever played in with Larry, he made a name for himself. We played, it was a tournament called the Bull Webster, which has changed over a period of time. The first tournament we played in, there were four-man teams. Everybody went out and shot their score. You added them all up after 2 days, and whoever had the lowest score won. They paired us off into twosomes. Well, Larry and I were a twosome. We played with another team. We always want another team to play against so that they can count your strokes too. I was playing with Larry, was my partner, and Dave Dieter, and I'm not sure who it was playing with Dieter, but we were near the top of the board after the first day, and we go out to play our second round, and we're doing okay. But we get to 16. And Larry is just short of the lake on 16 and has to chip onto the green. Well, he hit his first chip into the lake, holds out his hand to Sergio, his caddy, give him a ball. He chips that into the lake. He did that 10 times. And then he holds his hand out again, and Sergio says, "Larry, you don't have any more balls." So he was going over to my bag to get a ball. Well, the people we were playing with, knowing that he had jeopardized our chances of winning this tournament, they said, "Larry, pick up. We're just going to give you a 25." Ever since that day, the lake on 16 was known as Lake Dorr. But you know, Larry's he's an optimist, and he said, "You know, if that lake wasn't there, we would have won this tournament." Well, I got appointed as Greens chairman the next year, and the first thing I did is we took out that lake. you really get to know a person when you travel with them. And we've traveled so many places, but the highlight of my wife's and I travel has been the 15 years that we went to Minnesota with Larry and Marilyn to play in the Wayzata Invitational. This is a tournament in which they got about, I'd say 12 flights of 6 in a flight. Each person plays you play each of the teams in your flight, each of the other teams in your flight, a match, a 9-hole match. Then the winner of the flight makes the Derby. Larry and I played 15 years. We never made the Derby until year 15. And that was really something. This tournament wasn't the perfect format for us. They have in this tournament, they had a stroke differential requirement. And Larry was about a 20 or 22, and I was lower. I was always in the single digits. So Larry he played down, the first year we played in it, he had to play down to a 10 handicap. We got no chance. None. I mean, we should have had 15 shots on the tournament. We're playing with 6 or 7 shots. This 15th year, we won our flight. We made the Derby. There's 12 teams in the Derby. The first hole they eliminate 5. The next hole they eliminate 4, and that takes it. You got 3. And we come down to the next to the last hole. It's par 5. Larry powers a drive up about, it's a par 5 about 440. And, or par 5 about 540. He powers a drive out there about 160. And so I try to stomp on a 3-wood. Of course, I knock it in the water. And Larry is a little bit disappointed. But so he takes the drop, takes out a 5-wood, hits that about 180 yards further than he ever hit his drive, about 3 feet from the stick. We make it on. So we come down there, and I said to Larry, we're on the table. We're going to get a prize. He says, what do you mean we're on the table? We're going to win this tournament. Well, now the last hole, we got to play these 2 young guys at about 30. We don't get any strokes. We play them even. And they out-hit us probably they out-hit Larry by at least 100, and me quite a ways also. And we bogey the last hole, but they bogey the last hole too, because the green that you're hitting to is like a tilted table. It's fast, it's just impossible. Well, we got a gallery out there. Marilyn and Sue were there. I think that's the first time they ever seen us play in the tournament because they knew we weren't going to do much. But there was quite a crowd out there, and everybody's cheering for Larry. I've never been on a team where people were cheering for me before, but this was special. We ended up parring this hole. We win the tournament. It's unbelievable. But what I like most about Larry, you can tell the most about a man by what he does when no one else is looking. And Larry, I want to tell you just a couple short stories about what he did that nobody knows about here. Every other day or so, he had to go to the post office because he worked a lot on this. We'd be staying in Minnesota at his house for 10 days. He'd go pick up his mail. Maybe we'd go get a cup of coffee and a donut. One day we're coming back towards the house, and I said, Larry, let's get a newspaper. There's a 7-Eleven right there. And he cranks the wheel. Well, I certainly found out why whenever you see Larry and Marilyn going someplace, Marilyn's driving. Larry is a hazard on the highway. Okay. He cranks the wheel. He runs this girl off the road into a telephone pole. And I said, Larry, it's a good thing you haven't been drinking. This is a hard one to explain. But so we get out of the car, and this girl is sobbing. And Larry and I both thought that this girl may have been slightly handicapped, but she was absolutely in tears. And so Larry goes up to her, and he's hugging her, and he's calming her down, trying to console her. And I said, Larry, you're going to get us in more trouble than we are already. Leave her alone. Just talk to her. And so later that night, Larry gets her father's or her home number. He calls her father, and the father is apologetic to Larry about the accident. And Larry said, it was my fault. She had nothing to do with it. She did nothing wrong. And I just wanted to call and tell you to go get a car. And the guy said, it's different in Minnesota than it is here in California. The guy in Minnesota says, we don't need to go get a car. We got it. She can drive my truck to school tomorrow. And Larry said, oh no, you tell her, you go get her a car, any car you want, and I will pay for it. I'll come over there and give you my credit card right now. And well, that's empathy. In terms of in terms of generosity, we were back there. This may have been the 8th or 9th time we went to Wayzata to play in this tournament. We're going back there for about 10 days. We're back there for 2 or 3 days, and Larry gets a call from Jerry. There's a lady here that broke her leg and wants Dr. Dorr to fix it. And Dr. Dorr says, well, we'll talk to William Long, or there's a number of people. And we've all talked to her. She wants you, Dr. Dorr. Larry said, who is this girl? Well, it was a patient out of his past, maybe 15 years prior, that he had treated. And she just wanted Dr. Dorr. She had a fracture of her femur, I believe it was. Larry got on a plane, came back here. Took him 2 days. He gets on a plane, comes back, fixes her leg. Then he comes back, and I said, Larry, how much did it cost you to fly to LA and return? He says, about $2,700. I said, what do you get paid for fixing a fracture? He says, well, she was a Medicare case. I get paid $900. That's Larry Dorr, the most generous person I've ever met, probably the best friend I'll ever have. I love Dr. Dorr. Thank you.
Marilyn, family and friends, I'm going to try to summarize an incredible academic career. Obviously, we're here to celebrate the life of Lawrence Dorr, known to his friends simply as Larry. Larry had many things to many different people. He was a loving husband, father, surgeon, innovator, humanitarian, author, and of course, the blue chipper. As a friend and colleague in the academic world, I want to highlight some of Dr. Dorr's accomplishments. First, I'd like to say, as a physician, Dr. Dorr made tremendous contributions to humankind to relieve suffering from orthopedic conditions. He was known locally and nationally and internationally as one of the best hip and knee surgeons. As we've heard, Dr. Dorr grew up in Iowa. He attended Theodore Roosevelt High School in Des Moines, graduated from Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa, medical school at the University of Iowa, completed his internship at LAC USC, and later joined the Navy, reaching the rank of lieutenant commander. David, he did outrank you. He completed his surgical residency in orthopedics at LAC USC, and then he went on to complete his fellowship training at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York, an area he was very proud of. He returned to Los Angeles to begin his practice at USC in 1976. He practiced at USC until 1982, and then joined the Curlin and Job Orthopedic Clinic from 83 to 92. We were fortunate to have Dr. Dorr rejoin us at USC in 2012, where he completed his work until 2019. As a full professor, he was noted by his graduates as a great teacher and mentor, which I believe is the highest accolade an academic surgeon can achieve. Larry was a great friend of mine. We sat in the surgeon's lounge many days. He'd say, "Starnes, how many surgeries have you completed?" I said, "Only 2. Hell, I'm on my 5th one." Larry's accolades are numerous. His academic contributions to the field of orthopedic surgery are almost uncountable. He wrote over 180 publications in peer-reviewed journals centered around hip and knee surgery. He pioneered a revolutionary hip prosthesis. He invented and wrote a computer program for insertion of hips. He authored over 20 book chapters on hip surgery, and he was the president of numerous orthopedic societies. I can tell you, as being a former president of one of our societies, that is the greatest contribution your colleagues can give you, to bestow on you the presidents of your society. He was the president of the Knee Society 1990 to 91. He was the president of the American Association of Hip and Knee Surgery 1993 to 94. He received the Distinguished Alum Award from Cornell College and the University of Iowa College of Medicine. Larry was a much sought-after speaker for orthopedic conferences from all over the world. He presented over 400 presentations at national conferences, nationally and internationally. I became fatigued just summarizing the number of international talks that he was asked to speak. So I was curious, how many did he do in 1 year? In 2017, he went to 18 different locations around the world to give national conferences. In 2018, he gave 19. He was indeed a frequent flyer. Although a tremendous academic and mentor to many orthopedic surgeons, Larry was foremost a great person and humanitarian. He founded Operation Walk in 1994. Larry provided orthopedic care to many underserved areas of the world, restoring the ability to walk to individuals that otherwise would have been crippled for life. He received the Humanitarian Award from the American Association of Orthopedic Surgery and the American Association of Hip and Knee Surgery. We all know Larry as a friend, the blue chipper on Saturday mornings. But the world knew Larry Dorr, Lawrence Dorr, as one of the great academics in orthopedic surgery. And more importantly, the world knew Larry as a humanitarian. Thank you.
My name's David Dieter, and Larry and I played a little bit of golf. And the picture that came up earlier, not that one, we actually won a tournament here one time, the two-man better ball. And if you're around 60, 62, it's good. We were 59. A year later, Larry told people we were 58. A year later, we were 57. And every single year, I actually helped, I think, on 1 or 2 holes, but toward the end, I helped on none. Larry carried all 18 holes. He knew that for sure. So anyway, I want to thank Marilyn, Randy, Michael, and Christy for sharing Larry with us in the back room. Thank you. It's very difficult. So we had a little tournament with Flanagan, and Dorr stood Dieter and Starnes. We had it for about 8 or 9 years, and somewhere in there, Starnes and Dieter actually won at least once. But as it went on, we had no wins. We were 0-8 completely. And I look up on Larry, all this stuff Starnes just said about him. You see all these guys walking around with these little things on? Larry won all this CV he's got. When Larry became the president of Annandale, that's why we all wore him today, he loved it. Annandale was very special to him. And he, as we know, he loved golf. So I always look up on Larry as the blue chipper, the miracle worker. But the couple things, his glass was not half full. It was always full. And he never gave up. And one example came in our little tournament we had. In fact, it was world famous, according to Larry. He would line up. There's a hole where we'd play it. It's a 461-yard par 5. And out at 290 is a ditch. It's a big ditch. It's about 30, 40 feet across. And over to the right is a bridge where a golf cart goes across. And it's about 12, 14 feet deep. So we tee off, and Larry would always take his club and line up like this. He'd look down and move his feet like he's doing hip surgery just to get it precise. Well, on this hole, you had to hit to the left. Larry lines it up, jiggles it around, clubs here, hits it to the right. It only goes about 150 yards. Now he's got about 185 to clear the ditch. Got to hit it to the left. Once again, puts the club across his waist, lines it up, hits it to the right. Now, the first shot never left the ground. The next one never leaves the ground. Now, you get a little disheartened at this point, but Larry never gives up. On a dead run, it goes into the ditch, down 12, 14 feet. You'd get a little unhappy. Bounces straight up in the air, 5, 6 feet above the bridge, goes over to the left, bounces on the bridge, and rolls 20 feet across the bridge, down the cart path, and onto the fairway. Larry walks down like nothing's happened. He's made 2 great golf shots. Then you have to hit, the next one has to be at the pin. So he lines it up again. This time, though, he snaps across it and pulls it dead left. Now he's about 15 yards off the green and about another 10, 15 yards to the pin. Well, now he realizes, he's smart, we heard that from Vaughn and everybody else, that the ball does not going off the ground, so he takes out his putter and he putts it. Now, to this day, we're really not sure how close it was, because Larry had on the end, wanted Marilyn to bring his putter. On the end of his putter, he had a rubber cup, so he could just walk by and go like that, and it would pick up the ball. Well, there were 2 sets of rules in our game. We all had 1 set of rules. Larry had Larry's set of rules. And a gimme circle for Larry was any time he picked it up with the suction cup, period. And those were his rules. So I will just tell you, of all the time I spent with Larry, he never gave up. And I know on the 28th, he did not give up. He was just beaten.
My name is George Etheridge. I was an orthopedic industry representative and friend of Larry's. We had a special name for Larry. We always called him the Doorman. Larry Dorr was a fucking badass. I met Larry in 1983 where he was a speaker at the very first Current Concepts and Joint Replacement meeting. And I formed a relationship with him in 1986 when he was a surgeon implant designer for a company I represented, along with Aaron Hoffman and Dickie Jones. Having Larry as a friend has a lot of benefits. Really good wine, occasional cigar, and golf. Golf. How many people here are members here at Annandale? Everybody look around. Don't bet those people. Mike Flanagan has pole vaulted in and out of my wallet more times than I care to admit. Larry, such a special man, and we're so blessed to have had him in our lives. You have a gentleman, and I mean a gentleman, that had a massive orthopedic practice. He was a highly recruited speaker. He worked with his fellows. He was an industry consultant, a novelist. And then the crown jewel, Operation Walk. He, along with Jerry Ward and Mary Ellen Sieben, created an environment where people could come together, professionals from all over, working together tirelessly to deliver the gift of mobility to impoverished areas of the country. The world, I should say, not the country, the world. We would go on these missions and we would work hard, days, hard work. And we did that out of respect that we had for one another. But more importantly, out of the respect that we had for the people that we were there to serve. If Larry Dorr respected you, you were his friend. Randy, Mike, Larry loved this family. Marilyn, Larry shared with me and others countless times that there was no way he could have contributed so much to so many different venues without you. You are one heck of a team. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to celebrate the life of Larry Dorr, this great man. But how in the world could we celebrate Larry Dorr without also celebrating Marilyn Dorr? Marilyn! We love you very much.
My remembrances today of Larry will come from the perspective of a colleague and orthopedic surgeon, as well as from the Callahan family perspective, as our family and the Dorrs family were and are very close. And Larry, Marilyn, my wife Kim, and myself share the common bond of our Iowa connection. Kim and I actually met Larry for the first time at one of those infamous fine dining experiences that you've heard about today and at other times about Larry, and many of you probably experienced it yourself. He and I lectured at the alumnus meeting of the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York, and he and his mentor, Chit Renawat, who is in the audience, invited Kim and I to dinner at Lutece, a famous 3-star Michelin restaurant. The evening went long with food, drink, and of course cigars, when finally Andre Soltner, who was a 3-star chef, came up and knocked Larry on his arm. He goes, Larry, we have to have you leave now, as the staff needs a little bit of time to prepare for the next evening's meal. That wasn't the last time Kim and I were shown the door at the end of the evening while dining with Larry, I can tell you that. On a similar night, just before the pandemic, when Larry, another colleague of ours, Dan Barry, and I had just completed the same spectacular food and drink experience, we were walking out of the restaurant, and one of my former appreciative residents, who also knew Larry, raced out behind us and wanted to tell us he was going to have the waiter send something special to the table, when the waiter replied, "Son, there's nothing left in this restaurant any better than these guys have already had. Don't even try." And as you all know too, and as was said by Mike and others, that those meals were always mostly on Larry's dime. On an Operation Walk trip to the city of Arusha in Tanzania, South Africa, my daughter Kate and I experienced Larry at his best. As a surgeon, a doctor, a human being, and the character in which he was defined in a class of his own. His skills and abilities from pre-op through the surgery to the post-op, in getting a very frightened, young 20-year-old woman with a complex hip deformity in severe pain to leave the hospital in a few days later with a smile on her face and a huge hug for Dr. Dorr, with the ability to walk better than she had ever walked in her life. Priceless. On that same trip, the Operation Walk team, LA, which Katie, my daughter, and I used to always call the dream team, and they were. There was nothing like watching them function together. We took a day off to go to a safari, and Larry, Kate, and I went with the two Cornell student athletes and pre-med students talked about before, that Larry and Marilyn sponsored, as Mary and Larry sponsored two students every Operation Walk trip to go on the trip. So it was the five of us in this safari Jeep with Fulgence, who was our driver. And we had our own custom tour. Everybody else went their way, and we had our own custom tour. And this driver, Fulgence, had always been with Larry throughout the entire week. And any time we were at a dinner and there was an extra seat, he would call to say, "Bring Fulgence in to sit with us." And that's the type of thing Larry Dorr was always inclusive, as has been talked by many others today. That early morning, on our way to the safari, Larry told Fulgence, "I need to see a white rhino." You heard about this from Bob before. Not missing a beat, Fulgence told Larry, "Dr. Dorr, we don't have white rhinos in Tanzania, but I brought some white paint, so I can paint you one." Larry let out one of those big belly, wrenching laughs, which many of you as Annandale members have heard every time Larry won a golf bet, or the few times where the Iowa Hawkeyes beat the USC Trojans. In the last bowl season before the pandemic, December 2019, Larry, Marilyn, Kim, and I went to the Holiday Bowl in San Diego and watched Iowa beat the Trojans 49-24. Go Hawks. Go Hawks. Larry looked at me, and you've always seen him when he had this look on him. He goes, at the end he said, "Even in my absolute best, wildest dreams, I never thought we could beat them that good." I would have loved to have been in with him when he got back to the Annandale locker room with all the buddies, and I'm sure for once he finally won the bets. Larry Dorr was simpatico. He was one of a kind. He has and will continue to be missed. In life, he was recognized with many presidencies of various joint societies, as was pointed out, and many awards. And even still, his legacy continues to be recognized, as Maryland will attend a meeting in Dallas in a week and in Chicago in March, where Larry will be honored with humanitarian and lifetime achievement awards. And with the Greek Orthopedic Society has named their Innovator in Orthopedics Award the Dorr Medal. Most importantly of all, for all of us in this room, and all the friends and colleagues and patients, Larry's touch will continue to be an inspiration to us. He gave us for generations to come. And the one last story I'll tell, many of you may have heard it, and I'll have Jerry give you a article that he wrote, but he said in life there are 4 phases of life: the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, there is a God and it's not me, and giving back. And Larry and Marilyn obviously have done that throughout their lives. For me, it was very special because they gave me my chair at the University of Iowa, the Lawrence and Marilyn Dorr Chair in Adult Reconstructive Surgery. But they've touched many of us in this way. And I think as we talk about the rest of the day and carry it on, that we should all really tell each other your guys' stories. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a couple of stories. I'll wait till this plane goes by. We're going to have a couple of stories to start it off. And after we have these 2 stories, others are welcome to tell stories. We're going to have 3 buffets set up out there. But as you come back in here, I encourage everybody to get up and tell their story. But we're going to start this off before that with 2 folks. One is going to be J.D. Helprin, and the second is going to be Dr. Steve Lombardo. JP?
Hey everybody, I'm JD. When Jerry reached out to me in January and said that Larry had passed, I was so angry because we had unfinished business to do. 2 things. One is I always aspired, and I think I'll still have the opportunity to support Operation Walk in a meaningful way. And so I'm glad to hear that that remains. But I also always wanted to tell Larry what a huge inspiration he was, how he changed my life, how I actually feel fortunate to have had my hip problems because I met Larry Dorr. Let me paint a picture for you. 1986, I was 20. I was a recovering juvenile delinquent horse trainer from Wisconsin. And a horse had fallen on me and crushed my hip. I was going to UCLA. I wore what I called a Herman Munster shoe, big lift, and a cane. It wasn't a good look for me to go to college like that. And someone told me about a doctor who had done Willie Shoemaker, the jockey's hip replacement. And I said, well, that's the guy for me. And I went down to Curlin Job, and there was a bunch of what I would call then old people in the room. And I go into this room, and here comes this guy and Jerry, and he's got a big smile, and he's got the suit on. And I realized that this was my guy. I didn't realize he would be my guy for so many years and so many procedures, but he was my guy, and Jerry, they were my people. And so, you know, in 1986, he gave me back that leg length. He let me walk again. And he made me feel great about myself, but I had made a friend. Let me tell you the next thing that he did for me. 1991, for a minute, I was a lawyer, only for a minute. And I stopped by Curlin Job to say hi to Jerry and Dr. Dorr, and he said, let's get an x-ray of that hip, JD. And he did, and he said, JD, we've got problems. He said, that hip, there's some problems with that hip. And God, I was frustrated. Not because there was problems with the hip, because Larry had designed this hip, and he told me there's problems with the hip I designed. And I was so angry, not at Larry. I knew I could get a new hip, and he'd take care of it. But I was a lawyer. I said, Larry, I'm a lawyer now. I'm a first-year lawyer. This isn't right. And he said, and this was typical, he said, JD, I'm a big boy. He said, I designed that hip, and after we get done with this, you're going to head down to Texas, and you're going to talk to those guys who worked with me. I think the company was called Intermedics at the time. And he said, and you go to them, and we'll work it out. So guess what? I went down to Texas. I said, Larry sent me down here. They weren't happy with Larry, but he didn't care. And we worked through it. It was fun, actually. They ended up, I quit practicing law that year, but they ended up saying, hey, JD, can you settle all the hip lawsuits we have? Can you bring them back to your law firm? And I said, sure. Anyhow, flash forward, May 2010, I'd gone from being a lawyer to being an entertainment entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur. And I'd sold one of my early startups. And I'd been in Mexico and met some calamity nonsense. And I got a trip back to LA in a private jet, right to the runway to Larry and Jerry, ready to see me. And that was a messy one. Broken hip, broken femur. Ultimately, Larry had to put me in a body cast. And I said to Larry, I'm over this. And he said, JD, he said, you're a rock star. He said, and I'm going to send my car for you and drive her. Because I said, Larry, I'm not going back to the hospital anymore. He said, yes, you are. And he said, I'm going to send my car and drive her for you from now on. And I said, that's cool, but you're a rock star, and I want to do something for you. I said, Larry, I got a feeling that you don't know how to use the internet or email. Because he'd always said, Jerry can do this. And I said, I'm a tech entrepreneur. And I'd seen this, where people who were revolutionaries, who were people who really were masters of their domain, had not yet embraced this. And I said, I'll tell you what, on the down low, I'll teach you. I'll teach you how to do email. I'll teach you how to use the internet. Because you're going to find that your papers are on the internet, and that you're gonna love this. This is not just about computers. It's about really loving it. And Larry was a very good student. I have two emails that he sent me, very short, that I'll read you. One is, JD, my big computer is off and I don't know how to turn it on. He said, the mouse won't do it. Jerry told me, he's pressing the mouse like this. The mouse won't do it, and the button on the back won't. Help! Exclamation point, Larry. I said, it's easy stuff, I'll teach you. You're doing great, you're kicking ass, man. The next thing that came back is I was having problems with my body cast. And I reached out to him. And he says, and he responded to me right away. He says, JD, Jerry can help you fix the brace. I need to know how to get into my Wi-Fi connections. I don't know how to use the different options like movies, music. I set up email on my phone, but I need to know how to get messages easily. And on the computer, I don't know how to move around without always going back to the choices before. Lastly, sometime I need to know how to set up talk on this thing, how to use the little cartridges that plug into the computer to transfer data. Thanks, Larry. I love this guy. He had a huge impact on my life. Thank you, Larry. I can't thank you enough for what you gave me.
My name is Steve Lombardo, and I'm a member of the Curl and Job Orthopedic Clinic. One comment I'd like to make before I talk about Larry is my father once said to me, "Show me a person's friends, and I'll tell you what kind of a person they are." So the people here today are just a testament to what a fabulous person Larry and Marilyn are. I had a lot of things to say, but most of them have already been said, but I want to share a couple of stories with you. Dr. Runwat, I just wanted to mention that we did a residency together, and he was a year behind me, and I went into sports medicine, and I became the chairman of the fellowship committee, and 3 months before Larry finished his residency, he calls me up and says, "Steve?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I want to take a sports medicine fellowship." I said, "Larry, we made that decision a year ago, that we've already got people coming in." And he says, "I guess I'll go into joints." So I think we should get an assist for to the Joint Society for contributing Larry to the excellence that he demonstrated during his entire career. So there were two qualities I liked about Larry. He was very honest, and he was a man of his word. So these were two. I've got 1,000 stories, but one time when he was a first-year resident, we had a continuing medical education course at USC, and there was a reception after the first day at Dr. Harvey's house, our chairman. So Larry's a first-year resident, and the residents are invited. Shannon Stauffer was, I think, the chairman of the meeting. And it's at Dr. Harvey's house, poolside, etc. And there was a famous orthopedic surgeon. His name was Pinky Lipscomb. He was from Tennessee. He was an excellent basketball player, and he became sports medicine doctor at Vanderbilt for over 40 years. And Larry shows up with Marilyn with a 10-gallon cowboy hat. Remember that, Marilyn? She'll never forget. So Pinky Lipscomb had had a little to drink and goes up to Larry and says, "Larry," oh, he didn't know who Larry was. He says, "Hey, I want to put your cowboy hat on." And Larry said, "I've got 2 rules. I never give up my cowboy hat, and I never give up my woman." And Pinky says, "Well, I'm going to take it from you." And Larry says, "If you do that, you're going to be in the pool." So Pinky tried to take the cowboy hat off Larry's head, and Pinky was in the deep end of the pool. There was one problem. Pinky couldn't swim. So the chairman of our department's wife, Martha Harvey, elegant woman, long dress, 5'11", just the classiest woman in the world. She was, everyone was in a state of shock, and she was the only one that had the sense that Pinky couldn't swim. So she went in the pool and saved Pinky. And then they told Larry, "I think you ought to make it an early departure." So, and the second great story is, everybody's alluded to how competitive he was, but we were both residents, and we presented papers in Hawaii at Western Orthopedic Society, and one half day there was a play day, and it was tennis. And Larry was good at everything he did. Golf, tennis. Well, Mike, you're right. Not necessarily golf, but tennis and basketball, and he boxed. You name it, he did everything. So it was a blind pairing. So I was on the opposite side of the net, and Larry had his partner was a man by the name of Harlan Amstutz, and he was a chairman of the Department of UCLA Orthopedics, and he was sort of a legend, but the problem was that he didn't realize that his partner, Larry, was going to be a future legend. So we're ready, we rally, we warm up, and we're about ready to play, and Larry's standing by the service line. He's bouncing the ball, and Dr. Amstutz, who has fashioned himself to be a very good tennis player, walked up to Larry, and I'm on by the net, and I can hear the exchange, and he says, don't you think I should serve? And Larry's a first-year resident, and this guy was like a god. And Larry looks at him and he says, does this count now? And Dr. Amstutz said yes, and Larry said, I'll serve. Thank you very much. He was a friend for 50 years, Maryland, greatest guy in the world.
It's probably not my chance. I'm jumping in. My dad and Larry Dorr were best friends since they met. And he did everything for me. Larry Dorr did everything for me, regardless of his relationship with my dad. And then one day I had to turn to Larry and be like, Larry, I can't just call you Larry. What should I call you? And he goes, call me Uncle Larry. That's it.
Okay, so as everybody goes out and gets a little something to eat, I just want to say one other thing in that you may or may not know that Larry finished his Operation Walk book in about the last month of his life. And there will be copies outside, as well as a collection of the written remembrances that guests have done before. And we have printed bookmarks with information on how to order additional books, but everybody will get one book from a gracious Donor Talk Walk. So thank you for the day. See you later. Bye.